Hey everyone, Nigel here. In case you missed our announcement earlier this week, we're going to be taking a bit of a break from Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International for the holiday season. Don't worry, we'll be back with all new episodes starting in January, but until then, we've got a bunch of fun and interesting compilations that we hope you'll enjoy. Today, we're going to be taking a look at some of the best stories from past Crimes of the Week episodes, featuring crimes involving cars and other vehicles. One thing to keep in mind is that these segments have not been edited since they appeared in their respective lists, so references to specific charges as well as other small details may no longer apply. With that out of the way, let's get into it.
A Philadelphia police officer has been arrested and now faces various charges after he drunkenly crashed into a house this weekend. The dramatic incident unfolded on Saturday night around 8:20 p.m. when the off-duty cop lost control of his vehicle, sending it plowing airborne into the residence. According to reports, the crash significantly injured two of the homeowners. A 45-year-old man sustained injuries to his right arm, hand, hip, and leg, and a 53-year-old woman was pinned under the vehicle and knocked unconscious. She remains in critical condition. One of the homeowner's dogs was also killed as a result of the crash. The police officer, 27-year-old Gregory Campbell, has been charged with aggravated assault, DUI, and other related offenses. Police in St. Louis County, Missouri say that two suspects are in custody this week following a bizarre theft involving a funeral home vehicle. The incident began Thursday morning when a van belonging to a funeral home was left idling and unattended in the parking lot of a Quick Trip convenience store in Spanish Lake. Sometime after, a couple in their 30s got into the vehicle and drove away. The van had a body in the back when it was stolen. According to reports, the vehicle was spotted as far away as Illinois before ultimately being recovered in Festus, Missouri on Friday, about an hour's drive from where it had been stolen. The vehicle was recovered when someone noticed it in the parking lot of a Walmart and called police. Thankfully, the body was still inside and had not been tampered with during the period in which the suspects were in possession of the van. The pair was taken into custody without incident. At the time of this recording, it is not known what charges they will be facing.
This week, it was reported that a motorist in Alberta is facing thousands of dollars in fines after they were caught driving with a fake license plate that turned out to be printed on a piece of paper. The bizarre incident was announced in a Facebook post from Alberta RCMP, who say that last month, a traffic officer noticed a vehicle with a tinted license plate cover traveling on Queen Elizabeth Highway 2 near Leduc. When the driver was pulled over, the officer ran the vehicle's license plate, only to discover that it didn't exist. When questioned about the situation, the motorist not only admitted that the vehicle wasn't registered and that they were driving without insurance, but that the fake license plate was actually a piece of paper. The driver had printed the image on the paper, attached it to an I Heart My Car vanity plate, and hidden the whole thing behind the tinted cover. According to the RCMP, the initial fines issued to the driver totaled just over $2,000. However, they still have to appear in court for driving without insurance. If convicted, the minimum fine for that offense is $2,875. This week, it was reported that a woman from Minnesota was arrested after she allegedly showed up at the funeral of her ex-boyfriend where she was not welcome and drove recklessly through the cemetery, nearly hitting two people. Local police were alerted to the incident last Saturday after 28-year-old Blair Whitten arrived at the Riverside Cemetery where the funeral was being held. She had previously been asked by the deceased man's family not to attend the service after making harassing posts on social media about his death. A witness said that he had approached Whitten's SUV to ask her to leave, but when he got close, she slammed on the accelerator, forcing him to dodge the vehicle. Other witnesses reported seeing Whitten driving quickly and recklessly through the cemetery, running over grave sites and nearly hitting at least one other person. Whitten was arrested at the scene and charged with misdemeanor reckless endangerment. At her first court appearance on Monday, she pleaded not guilty. She claims that when people approached her vehicle, she feared for her safety, and so she attempted to flee. She also claims that she was careful not to hit anything.
This week, California Highway Patrol announced that they had arrested a man following a dangerous stunt in which he sat in the back seat of his Tesla while it drove on autopilot mode with no one in the driver's seat. According to the Highway Patrol, they received multiple calls about a driverless car on Monday evening traveling east on Interstate 80 across the San Francisco-Oakland Bridge towards Oakland. They tracked down the vehicle in question and signaled the car's occupant, 25-year-old Param Sharma, to pull over. Sharma was arrested at the scene and charged with 2 counts of reckless driving and disobeying a police officer. However, the story didn't end there. It turned out that this was far from the first time Sharma had pulled a stunt like this, and not even the first time he had been cited by California Highway Patrol. On April 27th, he was cited for similar behavior, and in 2015 was also charged with reckless driving. Additionally, he had taken several videos of himself from the car's back seat while it was operating in autopilot mode, which he had posted to social media. The latest video was reportedly filmed the day of Sharma's release from jail on Tuesday, in which he turned the camera toward a tablet displaying a news story about himself. In at least one of the posts, he also bragged about his vehicle, his purported wealth, and the stunts, saying, quote, "You blue-collar peasants can't understand my life." At the current time, it is unclear what repercussions Sharma will be facing, as his arrest and prior run-ins with the law have obviously not deterred his behavior.
Authorities in Clark County, South Dakota, say that a woman was arrested this week while driving a stolen tractor after she initially managed to evade police during a chase earlier in the day. According to reports, officers were initially alerted to a report of stolen gas at approximately 10 a.m. on Friday morning. The suspect, Jaden Durek, had allegedly driven away from a gas station in the small town of Henry without paying for her fuel. Police quickly caught up with Durek on the road, but a chase ensued when she refused to pull over. When Durek struck another vehicle and veered into a ditch in the city of Clark, about 15 miles west, it seemed like the chase was over. However, Durek managed to exit her vehicle and escape on foot. Thankfully, it didn't take long to track her down. Just before 6 p.m. that evening, authorities received information about a stolen John Deere tractor being driven near the scene of the crash a few hours earlier. Witnesses gave a description of the perpetrator that matched Jaden Durek. Police caught up with Durek once again a short time later, and though she refused to pull over, they eventually managed to stop her. She was taken into custody and now faces charges of eluding, burglary, and grand theft of the tractor. Durek is currently being held on a $20,000 cash bond, and authorities say more charges may be filed against her at a later date. There was also a warrant out for her arrest in Nevada. An Ohio man is facing a first-degree misdemeanor charge this week after he allegedly called and reported a fake shooting to distract police after he was pulled over. The incident took place last Saturday afternoon on July 3rd, when 34-year-old Muhammad Kabir was pulled over outside a Walmart supercenter in South Euclid, Ohio. In addition to driving with both a suspended license and expired plates, his 2-year-old son, who was with his wife in the back seat of the vehicle, was not sitting in a car seat. Instead of accepting that he was going to receive multiple traffic citations, Kabir instead apparently decided that the best course of action was to try and avoid the situation altogether by calling 911 and reporting a fake shooting near the Walmart in an attempt to distract the officers that had pulled him over. Unfortunately for Kabir, the call was traced back to his cell phone and was found to be a match to where he had been pulled over for the traffic stop. He was then arrested for making a false report. In addition to Kabir's first-degree misdemeanor charge for the false report, he faces numerous charges for his traffic violations.
Authorities in Washington state say that a 39-year-old man has been arrested this week following the theft of 2 large vehicles, one of which he used to destroy his estranged wife's house. The bizarre crimes began on Saturday, July 31st, after a man named Andrew Loudon was released from Western State Hospital, a psychiatric facility in the city of Lakewood. That evening, he was spotted by employees of the Osprey Rafting Company in Leavenworth walking around in a yellow sundress. Eventually, he stole a school bus that belonged to the company and fled the area. Police in 2 different counties pursued Loudon after he took the bus, but both were allegedly forced to abandon the chase due to Washington's new law governing vehicle pursuits. Because Loudon's crime did not meet the requisite criteria of posing an imminent violent or safety threat to others, police had to keep track of Loudon based on witness accounts. The school bus was later found abandoned near Moses Lake. Loudon was eventually caught the following evening in the city of Chewelah, almost 350 miles from where he had been released a day earlier. By that time, he had stolen a second vehicle, a front-end loader, and had used it to demolish a house that he had once shared with his estranged wife. At the time of Loudon's arrest, he was still wearing the dress that he had been spotted in the day before. He now faces numerous charges, including theft of a motor vehicle, possession of a stolen vehicle, first-degree malicious mischief, and attempting to elude a police vehicle. Representatives from the Nebraska State Patrol say that 3 people have been arrested and are facing charges this week following a dangerous high-speed car chase involving an unlikely culprit, an 11-year-old boy. According to police, the incident began shortly before 1 a.m. on October 16th when the State Patrol received a report about a stolen Jeep Gladiator. The theft had occurred in Lincoln, but officers were informed that the vehicle was now heading east towards Omaha on Interstate 80. The Jeep was quickly spotted near the 42nd Street interchange. However, when a trooper attempted to pull the vehicle over, the 11-year-old driver and his 2 14-year-old passengers only stopped briefly before taking off. The chase that followed reached speeds of 110 miles per hour, and at some point a handgun was thrown from the window of the stolen Jeep. Approximately 3 minutes later, the 3 suspects came to a stop voluntarily near the 20th Street overpass and were taken into custody. When troopers searched the vehicle, they found a second gun, and it was determined that both had been stolen. The 11-year-old suspect was arrested on suspicion of theft by unlawful taking of over $5,000, possession of a stolen firearm, flight to avoid arrest, willful reckless driving, obstruction, and other traffic violations. He has since been released to his mother. The 2 14-year-olds were taken to the Douglas County Youth Center on suspicion of possession of a stolen firearm. Thankfully, no one was injured as a result of the brief high-speed chase.
Authorities in San Diego, California say that a local man is in custody this week after he allegedly led police on a bizarre low-speed chase in a stolen vehicle while claiming there was a bomb on board. According to reports, the incident began around 7:45 p.m. on October 18th in the city's Pacific Beach neighborhood when the suspect jumped into a tow truck and drove off. After communicating with police dispatchers, the suspect apparently told police that he could not stop because there was an explosive device on board that would be triggered if he did so. A truly bizarre claim that many have likened to the 1994 Keanu Reeves movie, Speed. Despite the amusing comparison, according to police, this week's real-life chase completely lacked the blockbuster's titular speed. Instead of 50 miles per hour, the suspect reportedly never went faster than 10, rolling at a snail's pace as authorities easily followed. Still, the bizarre pursuit lasted until nearly 9 p.m., when the suspect got to the area of Kettner Boulevard and West Broadway in the city's downtown. It was at that point that police flattened the tires of the stolen tow truck using spike strips, causing the vehicle to come to a halt. While the suspect initially refused to get out of the tow truck even after stopping, he was eventually coaxed out after officers threw pepper balls inside. Thankfully, no bomb was found inside, and the man, who has not been identified by name, was taken into custody. Representatives from the Glasland RCMP in Saskatchewan say that a 27-year-old woman is lucky to be alive and to not have seriously hurt anyone else this week after she was caught driving extremely intoxicated after a crash that ripped off the roof of her car. According to reports, the RCMP were first alerted to the situation when they received reports about a woman driving along the shoulder of Highway 4, south of Meadow Lake, while attempting to pass another vehicle. The dangerous maneuver eventually resulted in the woman's car colliding with a semi-truck that turned in front of it, which ripped the roof of the vehicle completely off. Seemingly undeterred by this serious accident, however, the woman continued driving roofless, only stopping once she arrived at a home in Meadow Lake. It was here that she was arrested by RCMP officers. Inside the woman's car, police found 6 empty bottles of beer, as well as 1 half-full bottle. Testing revealed the woman's blood alcohol level was 4 times the legal limit. While authorities say that they are relieved that neither the woman nor anyone else was hurt as a result of her reckless actions, things easily could have turned out differently. The woman, whose name has not been released, has now been charged with impaired driving, dangerous operation of a motor vehicle, failure to stop after an accident, and flight from police. Representatives from Ontario's Durham Regional Police say that a 36-year-old snowplow operator is facing charges for impaired driving and driving while exceeding the legal blood alcohol limit this week, after he was caught throwing snowballs at other motorists while on the job. According to reports, police were alerted to the incident shortly before 11 p.m. on Wednesday, when they received calls that a man driving a tractor with a snowplow attachment was throwing snowballs in a parking lot at Thixon Road and Stellar Drive in Whitby. When officers arrived, they learned that in addition to throwing the snowballs, the man had also been using his tractor to block vehicles into the parking lot. The man, who has been identified only as a 36-year-old from Oshawa, was promptly arrested, and testing revealed that his blood alcohol level was above the legal limit at the time of the incident. He was subsequently charged with impaired operation of a conveyance and operation of a conveyance 80 milligrams or above. Though the 36-year-old was apparently released ahead of his court date, thankfully, it appears that drivers don't need to worry about him getting back on the road for now. In addition to a 90-day license suspension, his tractor was also impounded for 7 days. At the time of this recording, it's unclear if the man was working independently or for a specific snow removal company when the incident took place. It's also not clear what started his bizarre behavior in the first place. Authorities in the city of Vineland, New Jersey, say that they are investigating a fatal police-involved shooting this week after a man allegedly stole a backhoe and went on a rampage in a local mobile home park. According to reports, the incident began sometime after 5 a.m. on December 18th, when the unidentified suspect stole a backhoe and began to wreak havoc in the local area. The man began by destroying a car traveling down South Lincoln Avenue, before turning into the Penn Lincoln Mobile Home Park to continue his rampage. When police and emergency service workers arrived on the scene to try and stop the man, he turned his attention towards them, flipping an ambulance and a police car with the backhoe and totaling another police cruiser. Witnesses described the scene as something out of a movie. The rampage was finally brought to an end when one of the officers involved in the incident fired his service weapon at the suspect, fatally wounding him. Though the man was immediately given medical treatment, he was pronounced dead at the scene. At the time of this recording, authorities have declined to release any details concerning the suspect's identity. 3 officers who were injured at the scene were reportedly treated and have since been released from the hospital. No motive behind the attack has yet been uncovered, and the situation remains under investigation.
Authorities in Sioux Falls, South Dakota say that a suspected DUI driver made himself extremely easy to spot this week when he crashed into a patrol car while driving on the wrong side of the road. According to reports, the incident took place at around 1:20 a.m. on January 21st, when an officer from the Sioux Falls Police noticed a 2019 Jeep Cherokee driving the wrong way on 10th Street. The officer turned on his lights in an attempt to pull the 37-year-old driver over. However, the man kept right on going, crashing into his squad car. Thankfully, the man was only traveling at about 25 miles per hour at the time, and the officer was able to walk away from the crash mostly unharmed. The 37-year-old was arrested at the scene for driving under the influence, as well as a handful of other traffic violations. At the time of this recording, the man's name has not been released.
Authorities in the city of Monroe, Louisiana, say that the suspect behind a lengthy vehicle chase offered a fairly novel reason for why he didn't pull over when an officer tried to perform a traffic stop this week. He claimed that he wanted to finish his hamburger first. According to reports, the situation began just after 11 p.m. on January 19th, when an officer from the Monroe Police Department spotted a 2006 Chevy Impala that was driving with its high beams on, making it hard for him to see the road and potentially blinding other drivers in oncoming traffic. However, when the officer turned on his lights and siren to pull the driver over and tell him to turn his lights down, the man did not stop, and instead began to lead the officer on a chase. According to the officer, the pursuit lasted for some time, during which the driver blew through at least 6 stop signs without stopping and drove 60 miles per hour in a 25 zone. The chase allegedly ended when the driver pulled up in front of his home around midnight and stepped out of his vehicle holding a hamburger. The driver was later identified as 37-year-old Alan Seabury. After being arrested and read his rights, Seabury reportedly tried a number of excuses for why he hadn't stopped earlier, including that his brakes weren't functioning properly and that he couldn't stop. However, the most ridiculous one by far was that he had just purchased the hamburger he was eating, and he wanted to finish it before pulling over. It appears that the actual reason Seabury didn't stop was far more mundane, however. His vehicle was allegedly uninsured, and he was driving without a license. Seabury was booked into the local county jail on a felony aggravated flight charge. He was also charged with 3 misdemeanors, including driving without a license and driving an uninsured vehicle. Unfortunately, there's no additional information on the burger Seabury was apparently willing to go to jail for. Authorities in Martin County, Florida say that a 38-year-old Port St. Lucie man has been arrested and is facing multiple charges this week after he allegedly made a series of terrible and baffling decisions that resulted in a trail of destruction. According to reports, the incident began in the early morning hours of February 5th, when 38-year-old Bradford Weitzel left a local bar and apparently couldn't find his vehicle. While this is the point at which most people probably would have simply tried to arrange a different way home, this is not what Weitzel did. Instead, he decided to steal someone else's vehicle, a choice that he would later tell police was part of a, quote, good faith effort to try and track down his missing car. Though it's unclear how long Weitzel drove around in the stolen vehicle, what we do know is that at some point he ended up on some train tracks on Indian River Drive, where he claimed that the car either stalled or got stuck. Realizing that a train was coming, Weitzel bailed out of the vehicle and ran away shortly before it was struck by the train and sent flying into a nearby house. While the sleeping residents inside the house were thankfully not injured, as the Martin County Sheriff's Office pointed out in their report, quote, the explosive sound of a driverless car smashing into the side of their home was clearly jolting. After fleeing the scene of the crash, Weitzel allegedly continued the morning's antics by going to a nearby fruit stand, which he vandalized while trying to steal a forklift. He later told police that he also planned to use the forklift to search for his missing car. However, sometime during the attempted forklift theft, Weitzel apparently realized that he could simply report his missing vehicle to police, so he flagged down a couple of deputies who were responding to the car/train crash and told them that he was still looking for his car. He was arrested at the scene and has since been charged with grand theft and criminal mischief, though authorities say they also expect to file additional charges. While no reports specifically mention whether alcohol played a part in Weitzel's bizarre alleged crime spree, let's just say we have our suspicions.
Representatives from the California Highway Patrol say that they have arrested a person responsible for the brazen theft of a party bus this week after the suspect took the stolen vehicle onto the highway and led police on a high-speed chase. According to reports, the incident began at approximately 10:15 a.m. on February 22nd when a driver from the Top Dog Limo Bus Company arrived to pick up some clients in San Diego's Pacific Beach neighborhood. When the driver got out to notify the clients that they had arrived, they left the party bus running, evidently believing that they would only be gone for a second. However, the short window of time turned out to be more than enough for the vehicle to be stolen by an opportunistic thief, who quickly hopped into the party bus and sped away. Though the vehicle theft was quickly reported to local police, it wasn't until an hour and a half later that they got their first lead concerning its whereabouts. It happened when the owner of the Top Dog Limo Bus Company got a call from an angry driver on Interstate 405 who called to report that a person behind the wheel of one of their party buses was driving erratically. The company owner informed the driver that the vehicle had actually been stolen, and the caller agreed to stay on the phone until the police could make it out to the location. California Highway Patrol finally caught up with the stolen party bus at around 11:45 a.m. as it traveled northbound towards the Los Angeles area. For nearly the next hour, officers pursued the party bus as it sped dangerously past several cities, reaching speeds of up to 90 miles per hour. The chase finally came to an end at around 12:36 p.m. when the vehicle rear-ended a silver sedan, causing the bus to come to a stop on the wrong side of the road. It was at that point that the suspect exited the party bus with their hands up and was taken into custody. While the name of the suspect has not been released at the time of this recording, most reports we came across identified them as a woman. At least one other report alleged that the woman had been seen running into random businesses with a shopping cart and stealing items shortly before taking off with the party bus.
Authorities in Olmsted County, Minnesota say that a 53-year-old woman is in custody this week after she tried to flee from police who attempted to pull her over, only to become trapped in 150 feet of freshly poured cement. According to reports, the bizarre situation began just after 4:30 p.m. on May 16th, when a police officer in the town of Rochester noticed a woman blow through a red light in her vehicle while yelling through a bullhorn. Apparently, the 53-year-old woman in question was already well known to police by this point, as over the last few days, she had gotten into the annoying habit of driving down the street in her vehicle and screaming about religion from the same bullhorn. Needless to say, authorities had received plenty of complaints. However, when the officer attempted to initiate a traffic stop after witnessing the woman run the red light, she refused to stop, and instead, she took off. Because Rochester police apparently have a policy of not initiating vehicle chases unless a suspect is an immediate danger to the public, the 53-year-old was allowed to more or less go on her way for the time being. That being said, it didn't take long for her to find herself in trouble again, as witnesses observed her continuing to run red lights and drive erratically. At about 5:26 p.m., the woman's ridiculous behavior caught the attention of another Rochester police officer, who also attempted to conduct a traffic stop. Once again, the 53-year-old woman accelerated and tried to escape, though this time, she wouldn't make it quite as far. After driving toward Broadway Avenue, the woman crashed through a number of construction barricades, sending her sailing into about 150 feet of freshly poured concrete. While the woman continued to try and drive her way out of the quagmire, the concrete was victorious, and the 53-year-old remained trapped until she could be placed under arrest. According to the team in charge of pouring the concrete that the woman ruined, it's estimated that she did about $30,000 to $40,000 worth of damages. She has now been charged with 2 counts of fleeing police in a motor vehicle, 1 count of first-degree damage of property, and 1 count of driving a motor vehicle without a license. Perhaps most importantly of all, it's said that following the 53-year-old's arrest, she was also taken for a psych evaluation. Authorities in Martin County, Florida say that a local woman is facing numerous charges this week after she led police on a reckless high-speed chase that ended with her throwing a rubber snake at an officer. According to reports, the incident began sometime on May 18th, when a motorcycle officer with the Martin County Sheriff's Department flipped on his lights to initiate a traffic stop on a vehicle. As he did so, he noticed that a blue pickup truck that wasn't the vehicle he initially intended to pull over began driving erratically and started speeding up in order to get away. Upon noticing the driver's suspicious behavior, the motorcycle officer turned his attention to the pickup truck, which continued to accelerate to speeds between 80 and 100 miles per hour. When the officer got close to the truck, things escalated further when the woman behind the wheel deliberately tried to crash into him. The officer reportedly had to jump off of his bike in order to avoid being hit. A short time later, 2 police cruisers joined the chase as the pickup truck began to speed through the village of Indiantown. Once again, the female driver attempted to crash into both of the officers' vehicles, driving recklessly the entire time. The chase finally came to an end after the female driver hit yet another vehicle, this time a truck that was occupied by 3 civilians. The impact of the crash caused the victim's truck to roll over, though thankfully all of them suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Even after the female suspect was forced to come to a stop, though, she wasn't willing to go down without a fight. The first officer to approach her had a rubber snake thrown at them, which they initially believed was real. The woman was tased and then was placed under arrest. She has since been identified as 54-year-old Dawn LaPrade. LaPrade is now facing 4 counts of aggravated assault on a police officer, as well as fleeing arrest. Her bond has been set at $90,000, and the Martin County Sheriff's Office say that more charges could follow. While many people almost expect to see a colorful character or two while shopping at Walmart these days, one Florida man still apparently managed to find a way to raise the bar even further this week when he was arrested on DUI charges while inside one of his local stores. According to reports, the whole thing began at around 10 a.m. on July 24th, when police in the city of Melbourne, about 65 miles south of Orlando, were called to a Walmart location on Wickham Road with a report of an intoxicated male shopper. The man in question, 39-year-old Aaron Gregory, was reportedly driving around on one of the store's complimentary motorized scooters and was clearly extremely drunk. He had been witnessed by both security personnel and the store's surveillance cameras swerving down aisles, running into shelves, and knocking over displays, all while narrowly avoiding hitting several people and visibly nodding off while trying to operate the scooter's controls. When police finally caught up with Gregory, he was apparently so drunk that he was barely able to stand on his own, and he was subsequently transported from the store on a stretcher. Officers say that when they looked into the 39-year-old's backpack, which was in the basket of the scooter, they discovered an open bottle of vodka. Because the scooter Gregory was driving at the time of his arrest is considered a motor vehicle under Florida law, he has now been charged with 4 misdemeanors, including driving under the influence, disorderly intoxication, and possession of an open container of alcohol. He is currently being held in the Brevard County Jail in lieu of $3,000 bond. Just when we thought we'd hit peak Florida with our story about the Walmart scooter DUI from this week's main list, we came across a second story that we knew we had to share with you, which, if you can believe it, also happened in the exact same city. Authorities in Brevard County, Florida say that a 30-year-old man is facing several charges this week after he was allegedly responsible for causing a serious multi-vehicle crash that allegedly stemmed from him trying to play what police are calling, quote, a real-life game of bumper cars. According to reports, the situation unfolded at about 5:30 p.m. on July 28th in the city of Melbourne. Witnesses say it began when a red Ford sedan was seen intentionally hitting a black Mercury sedan near Aurora Road and Mosswood Drive. Things escalated significantly when the red sedan barreled through an intersection while trying to speed away, where it was hit by several other vehicles. This reportedly sent the car careening off the road, going airborne before it landed in a nearby parking lot. The impact was apparently so ferocious that it sent 3 people, including a juvenile, flying from the vehicle. A man who witnessed the crash said it was the worst collision he had ever seen in his life. All 3 people who were ejected from the red sedan needed to be taken to the hospital, including the juvenile who was airlifted there. Though the extent of their injuries have not been reported at this time, at least one source we came across stated that all 3 are now in stable condition. According to reports, the entire ridiculous incident was the result of a domestic dispute between the driver of the red sedan and the driver of the black sedan. The driver of the red sedan, later identified as 30-year-old Dominique Scott, is now facing several charges, including aggravated child abuse, driving while license permanently revoked, and grand theft of a vehicle. If you're a regular viewer of our Crimes of the Week series, then you might remember that last week we brought you the story of Aaron Gregory, a 39-year-old Florida man who was arrested after allegedly causing chaos at his local Walmart while driving around extremely drunk on one of the store's complimentary electric scooters. Well, it seems that Gregory was only the tip of the iceberg, as this week we stumbled across a similar story in the exact same county. Representatives from the Florida Highway Patrol say that a 58-year-old woman has been arrested and is facing charges this week after she was allegedly witnessed driving extremely drunk in a golf cart down one of the state's busiest highways. According to reports, the situation began sometime on the evening of July 30th, when the driver of a semi-truck noticed something strange while traveling northbound along Interstate 95 in Brevard County. To both her surprise and alarm, when she got closer, she realized that it was a woman driving a golf cart in the highway's center lane. Not only that, but the driver of the golf cart appeared to be passing out. Concerned for the woman's safety, the truck driver was apparently able to guide the golf cart out of traffic and off to the shoulder of the road. She then hopped out of her truck and ran over to the other woman, later identified as 58-year-old Diane Hawk. After taking one look at Hawk, the truck driver was able to conclude that she was likely drunk and took her keys while calling the police. Though Hawk tried to escape and get back onto the interstate, troopers were able to arrive before she could flee the scene. When questioned by officers from the Florida Highway Patrol, Hawk allegedly immediately became argumentative, insisting that she hadn't done anything wrong. She claimed that it was legal to drive a golf cart on Interstate 95 because, quote, she saw it on the news. Though it was obvious to police that Hawk was drunk due to the odor of alcohol on her and the amount that she was slurring her words, a search of her bag reportedly also revealed an open bottle of Jack Daniels. The 58-year-old was arrested at the scene and booked into the local county jail on charges of disorderly intoxication and resisting officers without violence.
Authorities in Salt Lake City, Utah say that a 46-year-old man has been arrested this week after he allegedly stole a large piece of construction equipment and went on a bizarre and destructive rampage in the parking lot of a local grocery store. According to reports, the incident began sometime around noon on August 6th when police received calls from startled witnesses who told them that a man was randomly digging up a parking lot in an excavator. The parking lot in question belonged to a Smith's grocery store and was located in the city's Poplar Grove neighborhood. When officers arrived at the scene, they were able to arrest the suspect, later identified as 46-year-old Omar Ortega. He had allegedly stolen the excavator from a nearby construction site, driving it roughly a mile before starting to dig in the parking lot. While witnesses had prevented Ortega from fleeing the scene, unfortunately, they weren't able to stop his destructive rampage. By the time the 46-year-old was arrested, he had reportedly managed to dig a fairly long and muddy trench, which began in a grassy strip at the border of the parking lot, continued into the sidewalk, and then went into the parking lot itself. In addition to police, the incident required responses from several local utility companies as Ortega hit a water line and ripped up a bunch of newly installed fiber optic cables. At first, there were concerns that he had also caused a gas leak, but it was later determined that this was not the case. The total damage done in the incident is currently estimated to be over $40,000. As for how Ortega managed to steal the excavator in the first place, sources seem to disagree. Many report that the vehicle was left on and unattended, while others state that he managed to somehow jam the wrong key into its ignition and get it working. Ortega is now facing charges including felony theft and felony criminal mischief. Unfortunately, nothing has been reported about the alleged motive behind the strange and destructive incident. Authorities in the city of Pueblo, Colorado say that they arrested a man who was essentially a walking public service announcement about what not to do behind the wheel of a vehicle this week after he allegedly crashed into the front of a local DMV office while both driving drunk and street racing. According to reports, the incident took place sometime on the night of August 20th when 20-year-old Isaiah Trujillo was racing another vehicle down 4th Street. At some point, he lost control of his vehicle, sending it skidding sideways through a nearby parking lot, over a curb, and right into the front doors of the Pueblo Department of Motor Vehicles office. Security cameras on the exterior of the building reportedly captured the dramatic crash, which resulted in serious damage to the office's front entrance. Though Trujillo eventually fled the scene following the accident, it didn't take long for police to catch up with him and he was placed under arrest. He has now been charged with driving under the influence, leaving the scene of an accident, and careless driving. While officials say that they've made arrangements for a mobile RV office to be brought to the site so that the DMV can continue to operate during the building's repairs, representatives from the office took to social media to remind everyone about the basics of road safety. In a post on Twitter, they said, quote, "Don't speed while driving, don't drink and drive, and don't crash your vehicle into a driver's license office."
Authorities in Tupelo, Mississippi say that a local airport worker has been arrested and is facing charges this week after he stole a small plane and threatened to crash it into a local Walmart. According to reports, the situation began shortly after 5 a.m. on September 3rd when the suspect, Corey Patterson, allegedly stole a Beechcraft King Air C-90 twin-engine airplane from the Tupelo airport. He then began to fly around the local area and started making threats once police were able to make contact with him. Authorities say that as they tried to negotiate with Patterson, he said that he was considering crashing into the nearby Walmart on West Main Street, causing the store and several surrounding businesses to be evacuated. After several hours of back and forth with Patterson, police were finally able to get him to agree to end the situation peacefully, though he reportedly did not have the skills to land the stolen plane. As a result, a private pilot had to be brought in to verbally walk him through the steps on how to touch down. Once receiving instructions, Patterson reportedly aborted the planned descent and took off towards Benton County. Fortunately, police were able to establish contact with Patterson at around 10:15 a.m., at which point he confirmed that he had landed in a field about 60 miles away. He was placed under arrest and has now been charged with grand larceny and making terroristic threats. While authorities have not confirmed a motive behind the case, several sources we came across stated that so far police believe that the theft was a crime of opportunity. Apparently, Patterson has worked for an aviation company at the Tupelo airport for the last 10 years, and most recently was in charge of refueling aircrafts. Still, the actual why behind the crime reportedly remains a mystery. At the time of this recording, Patterson is in custody in Benton County and is awaiting a transfer to Tupelo. Authorities in Monroe County, Florida say that a 19-year-old woman has been given the legal equivalent of a slap on the wrist this week after she offered a bizarre explanation for her recent behavior at a recent traffic stop. According to reports, the incident began on the morning of May 12th of this year when an officer with the Monroe County Sheriff's Office spotted a woman speeding and driving recklessly in Key Largo. The woman was traveling at about 90 miles per hour, so the officer decided to conduct a traffic stop. However, when the officer turned on his siren and lights, the woman, later identified as 19-year-old Jania Shymiracle Douglas, did not stop. Instead, she led the officer on a 5-mile car chase, during which time she could be seen noticeably looking back at the patrol car that was chasing her. The pursuit came to an end at a 3-way intersection when another police officer laid down some spike strips. Douglas reportedly stopped before running over the spikes. When questioned about her behavior, Douglas initially claimed that she was late for her job as a housekeeping supervisor at a local resort. However, when the officer pressed her on this, saying that if she had simply stopped when he requested, all she would have ended up with was a citation at worst, she reportedly responded that, quote, being arrested for something simple had always been on her bucket list. According to the officer who conducted the stop, she actually mentioned this a few times, and fortunately for her, he was able to grant her wish. According to reports, Douglas has no prior criminal history, and so was given a deal by prosecutors. In addition to serving 96 hours of community service, paying $750 in court fees, and writing a letter of apology, if she stays out of trouble for the next 12 months, authorities have agreed to dismiss the felony charges against her. Authorities in Pinellas County, Florida say that a 23-year-old man has pleaded guilty to a felony charge this week after he was involved in a bizarre and dangerous incident last year in which he led police on a high-speed chase to impress a woman. According to reports, The situation began on the night of August 28, 2021, when a man, later identified as then 22-year-old Taylor Beverly, was observed by police in Clearwater blowing through a red light at the intersection of Chestnut Street and South Myrtle Avenue. As he did this, Beverly apparently turned around and made eye contact with officers from his white 2017 Suzuki motorcycle before speeding off. Though police attempted to make a stop, Beverly refused to pull over, continuing to fly through red lights and weave through traffic at speeds of well over 100 miles per hour. Because the chase quickly became dangerous, officers called off their pursuit, but put out a notice for other law enforcement in the area to be on the lookout. Beverly was eventually caught just before 10 p.m. that same night. At the time of his arrest, Beverly offered a bizarre excuse for his behavior, stating that he had been trying to show off for the female passenger who was also on his motorcycle. He said that the two of them were on a first date. It turned out that police were not the only ones who did not see the humor in the situation, though. The woman herself stated that she had been screaming at Beverly to stop throughout the chase, but that he had refused to do so. Beverly ultimately pleaded guilty to a fleeing or eluding charge, and this week was sentenced to 2 months in jail. In addition to the jail time, the 23-year-old's license was suspended for a year, and he was ordered to pay about $700 in court fees and fines. Apparently, this is not the first time Beverly has been in trouble with the law. In addition to prior convictions for grand theft, cocaine possession, and passing a bad check, the 23-year-old was also cited for reckless driving and driving an unregistered vehicle following a 2019 motorcycle crash. Representatives from Texas's Kaufman County Fire Marshal's office say that they have made an arrest in a bizarre arson case after a man dragged a flaming trailer through the county earlier this summer, leaving behind a trail of destruction in his wake. According to reports, the incident began on July 31st, when police and firefighters received calls from multiple concerned citizens about a man pulling a burning trailer behind his vehicle on roads all over Kaufman County. The trailer was completely engulfed in flames, but the driver continued to go about his business as if nothing was wrong, seeming not to be bothered by the dangerous situation. Though police responded quickly to the calls, the man eventually unhitched the flaming trailer on a local bridge and fled the scene before he could be caught. Before he did, he managed to start several grass fires, including some which were near residences, causing at least 9 homes to be evacuated. While thankfully none of these homes were destroyed, reports state that property was damaged and around 7 acres were burned before emergency workers could extinguish all of the fires. Understandably, photos and videos taken of the driver's vehicle and burning trailer quickly circulated online, with the unknown culprit being dubbed Rocket Man. Unfortunately, no one had managed to get the man's license plate, and police asked members of the public who might have any additional information to come forward. Well, according to reports, the search for Rocket Man finally came to an end on September 16th, when he was arrested at a Walmart in Hood County, about 100 miles away from where the incident happened in July. Rocket Man has now been identified by police as a 43-year-old man named Jeffrey Daniel Furr from Canton, a city just east of Kaufman County. Furr was apparently already a fugitive at the time of the July incident, but is now facing additional charges for arson. Authorities in Marion County, Florida say that they recently dealt with quite the bizarre and dangerous traffic stop recently when they pulled over a man with serious damage to his vehicle, only for him to blame it on some sort of curse before threatening and attacking police officers. According to reports, the incident began at around 4 a.m. on October 23rd, when officers from the Marion County Sheriff's Office noticed a suspicious vehicle traveling on a northbound on-ramp of the I-75 near the community of Marion Oaks. The car's hazard lights were on, and it was tilted to one side, appearing like both of the tires on the driver's side were deflated. However, when police conducted a traffic stop and got a closer look, They realized that the tires were not simply deflated, they were completely ripped to shreds, and the man behind the wheel was driving on what remained of the rims. When questioned about the bizarre situation, the driver, later identified as 29-year-old Andres Orjuela Montalegre, offered a strange and nonsensical explanation. He claimed that someone had placed a curse on him and that he had hit a curb too hard. He reportedly went on to say that this left him with a, quote, do-or-die choice: drive home without tires, or set his car on fire and sleep on the median of the highway. I mean, come on. We've all been there before, right? Anyway, according to police, things started to make a little more sense when they asked Montalegre to step out of his vehicle and noticed that he was very unsteady on his feet. They suspected that he was driving under the influence. Much to the chagrin of the officers, the 29-year-old was apparently intent on sticking to his initial story, though. He repeated his claims that someone had put a curse on him before saying that the damage to his car was the result of, quote, paranormal activity. He then began to threaten the officers, telling one of them, quote, if you mess with me right now, let me tell you something. I'm going to break your head with a baseball bat. He then allegedly told the same officer that he was going to skin him alive. As you might imagine, this made performing roadside sobriety tests quite difficult. In fact, police reportedly had to abandon this effort altogether when Montalegre allegedly spat on two of them, then grabbed for one of their tasers while they were wiping the saliva off. Needless to say, this was the point at which he was arrested, though apparently not before kicking multiple officers while being carried to the back of a patrol car. Montalegre reportedly refused to cooperate once again after being taken to jail, and was subsequently charged with 2 counts of battery on a law enforcement officer, resisting an officer with violence, attempt to deprive an officer of means of protection or communication, corrupt by threats against a public servant, and of course, driving under the influence. Montalegre is currently being held on $27,000 bond, and if convicted on all of the charges, reportedly faces up to 25.5 years in prison. Authorities in Salt Lake City, Utah say that a Colorado man is facing numerous charges this week after he went on a violent carjacking spree and caused several accidents, all allegedly because he was angry over a canceled flight. According to reports, the situation began at around 5 a.m. on November 4th when police were called to the Salt Lake City International Airport. Upon arrival, officers learned that a man, later identified as 20-year-old John Joseph Thomas Green, had gotten into an argument with an employee at the airport's ticket counter after being told he could not book a same-day ticket to Denver. He had gone on to cause a disturbance over another flight which had been canceled. However, by the time police learned all of this from airport staff, Green had already fled. At around 5 a.m. that morning, he allegedly carjacked the driver of an SUV outside of the airport and sped off. Once behind the wheel, Green began a destructive rampage that reportedly lasted for some time and spanned 2 counties. After stealing the SUV, Green reportedly crashed into a silver car before making a U-turn and smashing into a white BMW SUV. After failing to carjack the female driver of that vehicle, he fled in the stolen SUV once again and drove south. He soon hit another car and nearly ran right into a building. Once this was over, Green reportedly decided that he was done with the SUV and carjacked the owner of a Dodge Durango instead. He then proceeded to crash into no less than 5 more vehicles on the I-80 in the Durango. By the time police finally caught up with Green, he had ditched the Durango and was in the process of allegedly stealing another vehicle. This time, it was a Toyota Tacoma, which he had gotten to pull over after throwing rocks from the side of the highway. In that case, however, the owner had removed their keys, preventing Green from fleeing. He was arrested after being forcibly removed from the Tacoma. According to reports, Green is now facing a litany of charges, including aggravated robbery, aggravated assault, receive or transfer of a stolen vehicle, and driving under the influence. Authorities in Jackson County, Oregon say that an elderly woman is facing multiple charges this week after police attempted to pull her over for a simple traffic stop, but she instead led them on a dramatic chase. According to reports, the incident began shortly before midnight on November 4th, when officers from the Josephine County Sheriff's Department spotted a vehicle driving dangerously fast on the I-5 South near the town of Merlin. The driver, later identified as 75-year-old Elizabeth Catherine Essex, was reportedly clocked driving 112 miles per hour. When the officers attempted to pull Essex over, she reportedly ignored them and kept driving, prompting a chase. The pursuit was soon taken over by the Jackson County Sheriff's Department when Essex crossed over the county line. According to police, Essex was quite determined to get away and continued to drive even after spike strips were deployed 7 times, puncturing all of her tires. She was finally forced to come to a stop after about 40 miles when officers conducted a successful pit maneuver on her vehicle somewhere near the city of Ashland. Essex was not injured and was taken into custody immediately afterwards. Following her arrest, police say that Essex bizarrely fought with them over how fast that she had been driving, saying that she had been going 104 miles an hour rather than 112. She also reportedly claimed that she had fled from police because, quote, she did not want to get arrested because she did not trust law enforcement. The 75-year-old is now facing multiple charges, including attempting to elude police in a vehicle and reckless driving. Authorities in Salt Lake County, Utah say that a 29-year-old driver is facing charges this week after an alleged road rage incident in which he stupidly pointed a gun at another motorist who turned out to be a cop. According to reports, the incident took place at around 11:45 a.m. on November 14th, when the suspect, later identified as 29-year-old Taylor Ray Bradley, was driving down 5600 West in the Salt Lake City suburb of West Valley City. Things were apparently normal until a truck that was traveling in front of Bradley signaled to change lanes as they approached 4100 South. While it's unclear why, this simple lane change reportedly sent the 29-year-old into a full-blown rage, and after the truck made its turn, he followed. Bradley allegedly then proceeded to tailgate the other vehicle before changing lanes himself and racing up so that he was parallel to the truck. He then began to yell profanities at the other driver before pulling out and pointing what appeared to be a small silver firearm at him. Unfortunately for Bradley, as soon as he was finished with his alleged tantrum and attempted to speed off, the other driver turned on blue lights inside his truck and motioned for him to pull over. It turned out that the vehicle was an unmarked cop car, and the driver was a police officer with the local Granite School District. According to the officer, even though Bradley was caught pretty well red-handed, he still tried to lie about the handgun, which was soon found wedged into the cushion of the front passenger seat. In a subsequent report, the officer referred to Bradley as, quote, an individual who could potentially put the public and other motor vehicle operators at risk for road rage incidents. The 29-year-old was arrested at the scene and was booked into the Salt Lake County Jail for aggravated assault and threatening to use a weapon in a fight. Authorities in Phoenix, Arizona say that 2 men are lucky not to have been seriously injured or killed this week after they allegedly drove down a steep embankment and into a river bottom following a police chase. According to reports, the incident began sometime on the evening of December 6th when police in the city of Tempe were investigating a stolen car. Officers followed the 2 male occupants as they drove over the city line into Phoenix, attempting to make a traffic stop near 40th Street and University Drive. However, the driver refused to pull over and started to flee the area after hitting one of the police patrol cars. Officers reportedly chased the suspects as they headed west, but eventually made the choice to abandon the pursuit due to the men driving erratically at a high rate of speed. Despite this, police continued to patrol the area and keep an eye out for the suspects. It wasn't long before they were spotted again. This time, They weren't going anywhere, though. It turned out that while trying to flee the area, the suspects had driven off of a steep embankment and were trapped in the Salt River bottom just off of Interstate 10. While it's unclear whether they had done this intentionally or accidentally, they had plunged more than 200 feet and now needed to be rescued. The operation was reportedly carried out by the Phoenix Fire Department, who had to scale 2 100-foot cliffs to get the suspects to safety. Authorities say the men were both extremely lucky, and that despite the dangerous situation, only one of the suspects needed to be taken to the hospital with minor injuries to his ribs. The men have now been identified as 24-year-old Markel Johnson and 26-year-old Kevin Turner. At the time of this recording, both men reportedly remain in custody and are facing undisclosed drug and theft charges. Representatives from Arizona's Department of Public Safety are issuing a reminder to all drivers about the rules of the road this week after they say they pulled over a motorist who decided to try and get away with a little holiday hijinks. According to reports, the incident took place at around 8 a.m. on December 13th, when an officer spotted something unusual while driving on the I-10 in the city of Avondale. There was something weird about the passenger in a red sedan that was being driven by a female motorist who was traveling in one of the highway's HOV lanes. What was wrong with the passenger exactly? Well, you might say he looked a little suspicious. It turned out that the so-called passenger wasn't a passenger at all. It was a life-size inflatable Grinch that the woman had apparently stuck in her front seat to make it look like she was carpooling. Understandably, the driver was pulled over. In a statement on Twitter, representatives from the state's Department of Public Safety said that while they appreciated the driver's festive flair, what she did was in fact still illegal. The woman was apparently issued a citation before being sent on her way. A 23-year-old Oklahoma man who was recently released from prison will likely be heading back there this week after he allegedly stole a truck carrying an expensive load of sports cars, then gave police a rather novel excuse for his actions. According to reports, the whole thing started sometime on the morning of February 15th, when Arizona's Cochise County Police were called about a carjacking at a truck stop in the city of Wilcox. They arrived to find a driver who said that he had been attacked by a man who had pretended to take an interest in his truck, who then threw him from the cab and proceeded to drive off with the load of 10 Chevrolet C8 Corvettes he was supposed to be delivering. Officers quickly tracked down the stolen semi-truck, since, it wasn't the most inconspicuous vehicle. The suspect, later identified as 23-year-old Isaiah Walker, initially refused to pull over, forcing other drivers off the road. However, after some time, he eventually gave up and was taken into custody. Following his arrest, Walker apparently gave a pretty interesting excuse for his actions. He claimed that he wasn't at all interested in the Corvettes. Instead, he said that he had stolen the semi-truck because he, quote, needed a ride home. The 23-year-old also admitted that he had just been released from prison. Walker is now facing new charges, including robbery, felony theft, and 11 counts of theft of a means of transportation. Police say that thankfully there was no damage done to either the semi-truck or the Corvettes it was transporting, and that the victim was ultimately able to complete his delivery. Pretty good news, considering the estimated value of the load was over $1.25 million. A 30-year-old Arizona woman is reportedly facing multiple serious charges this week following a strange and terrifying incident in which she allegedly assaulted and tried to run down a group of adolescents and young teens with her vehicle, believing that they were bullying her own children. The whole thing reportedly began at around 4 p.m. on February 27th, when the suspect, 30-year-old Brandy Gotch, drove to West Green Park in the city of Peoria. Once there, she apparently saw a group of kids who she claims were throwing wood chips at her children. Upon recognizing these kids as the same ones that had allegedly been bullying her kids in school, she decided to confront them. It wasn't long before things spiraled out of control. When one of the young teen boys in the group called Gotch a slur, she reportedly grabbed him by the hair and started yanking his head back and forth. She then grabbed a large stick and allegedly began chasing one of the adolescents, with witnesses saying they heard her yell, quote, "I am going to kill you and run you over." The 30-year-old reportedly tried to deliver on this threat moments later when she got into her pickup truck and began driving recklessly through the park area. She allegedly headed straight for the group of kids who she believed were bullying her children, who began to run for their lives. Gotch then fled the scene, though apparently not before running over the ankle of one of the 12-year-old girls in that group. After police were called, Gotch was arrested at her home nearby. She reportedly admitted to most of what had happened, though apparently denied several key parts, including that she knew that she had hit anyone. She also claimed that her kids, who were apparently in her truck at the time of the incident, were safely secured. However, they apparently contradicted her version of events. Following the arrest, Gotch's husband gave an interview with local media where he claimed that everyone was, quote, grossly blowing this out of proportion. He claimed that his wife never tried to run anyone over and instead placed the blame on his kid's school, saying, quote, "I feel that if the school would be held accountable for their actions and actually would tolerate a zero-tolerance bullying atmosphere, then this could have 100% been avoided." At the time of this recording, Gotch is facing a number of charges, including attempted murder and endangerment. She was booked into jail and was held on $250,000 cash-only bond. The novelty of a novelty license plate appears to have worn off for one 19-year-old Florida man this week after he allegedly decided to lead police on a reckless high-speed chase on his motorcycle, but authorities ended up with the last laugh. According to reports, the whole thing started just before 7 p.m. on March 12th, when a deputy with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office spotted something while on patrol in the city of Port Orange. After noticing a group of motorcycle riders popping wheelies near Dunlawton Avenue, he drove over to investigate. That's when he realized that he recognized one of the riders, later identified as 19-year-old Ashton Jarvis. Or rather, he recognized his novelty license plate. The fake plate read "Will Run" and was the same one that had been involved in a police pursuit during the area's bike week the week before. The deputy got out of his vehicle to approach Jarvis. However, before he could get to him, the 19-year-old reportedly took off once again, prompting a chase. The situation quickly got dangerous, with Jarvis evading authorities through multiple cities. During this time, he was captured on aerial surveillance by helicopters running red lights, weaving in and out of traffic, and hitting speeds upwards of 145 miles per hour. At one point, the helicopter following him even noted that the 19-year-old was pulling away from them. The chase finally came to an end after Jarvis apparently decided to get cocky. While circling a police cruiser that was chasing him, he allegedly yelled to an officer, quote, "What happens if I stop?" He reportedly got close enough that the officer was able to pull out their taser, prompting the 19-year-old to jump off his bike and surrender. Body cam footage shows another officer approaching and asking, "Oh man, was that fun?" To which Jarvis can be heard responding, "No, not really." According to police, after the 19-year-old's arrest, he stated that he purchased his fake license plate after seeing it online and thinking it was funny. I imagine what was less funny, though, is when he was charged with fleeing at high speed, reckless driving, and possession of a counterfeit license plate, as well as numerous traffic violations. Representatives from the Michigan State Police say that a man is in custody this week following a drug-fueled crime spree in which he led multiple police departments on a dangerous chase while behind the wheel of a stolen tree trimming truck. The whole thing started sometime on March 16th when police in Redford Township received a report about a stolen tree trimming truck with a wood chipper attached, which had allegedly been stolen by a local 35-year-old man in the area. Officers were able to spot the vehicle in question. However, they were apparently forced to abandon the chase after the situation became too risky and the suspect smashed into one of the department's police vehicles. The situation picked up again at around 4:30 p.m. when police in both Brighton Township and Livingston County began to receive 911 calls about a truck driving recklessly. callers stated that the man behind the wheel was swerving off the road, hitting mailboxes, and had almost caused head-on collisions with several other vehicles. After receiving a bit more information, authorities were able to determine that the truck in question was the same stolen tree trimming truck from earlier that day. By this time, the 35-year-old suspect was also accused of stealing a dog at gunpoint. Upon tracking the man down, Michigan State Police initiated a second chase, one which ironically ended with the suspect crashing the tree trimming truck into a tree. The 35-year-old fled the scene on foot, but was apparently found with the help of a police canine after he attempted to hide in a Rubbermaid container at a nearby residence. At the time of the man's arrest, there was no sign of the dog he had allegedly stolen at gunpoint. When asked about this, the 35-year-old reportedly claimed the animal had jumped out of his vehicle before the second chase. It's unclear if the dog has yet been found. The man also admitted that he had been high on methamphetamine during the bizarre crime spree. At the time of this recording, the 35-year-old has been charged with operating a vehicle while intoxicated and the unlawful driving away of an automobile. However, more charges are expected to follow. So far, the man's name has not been released. A 37-year-old Indiana man has reportedly managed to avoid jail time this week after he pleaded guilty in connection with a bizarre incident last summer in which he led police on a high-speed chase while working as a Google Street View driver. The whole thing started at around 5 p.m. on July 31st, 2023, when an officer with Henry County's Middletown Police Department spotted a rather unique vehicle driving recklessly near a local high school. The car was equipped with several 360-degree cameras that were mounted on an antenna, had California license plates, and was wrapped in a vinyl skin. The skin revealed why the car looked so strange. This was a vehicle that was supposed to be mapping for Google Street View. The officer attempted to conduct a traffic stop. However, the driver, later identified as 37-year-old Coleman Ferguson, refused to pull over. Instead, he sped up, eventually reaching speeds of 120 miles per hour. The Middletown officer alerted police in neighboring Madison County, who quickly joined in on the pursuit. It eventually came to an end when Coleman lost control of the Street View car, barreling through a guardrail and briefly going airborne before landing in a creek. He was arrested immediately after. During court proceedings at the end of last month, Coleman admitted that he had no reason to try and flee from police, other than the fact that he said he was scared. He pleaded guilty to a felony charge of fleeing from law enforcement, and as part of a plea deal is due to be given a 1-year suspended jail sentence. He has also agreed to pay a little over $3,200 in restitution. Despite Coleman's guilty plea, authorities say that they are confused as to how he ever became a Google contractor in the first place. The 37-year-old reportedly has a rap sheet that includes multiple driving-related offenses, and according to people in the area, had been seen driving recklessly in the Google vehicle many times before last summer's incident. Authorities in Suffolk County, New York say that a 56-year-old Florida man is facing a number of charges this week after he led officers on a lengthy and dangerous high-speed chase, one that ended with a rather dramatic act of desperation. According to reports, the whole thing began just before 11 a.m. on April 8th, when police in the Long Island community of Southold were called to the local town hall annex. A woman who worked there explained that her ex-husband, who she identified as 56-year-old Roger Foster, had slashed a tire on her vehicle. Though Foster lived in Florida, he had apparently driven to the area that morning in a rental car for the express purpose of harassing his ex, who also had a no-contact order against him. The woman was able to provide authorities with the license plate information of the car Foster was traveling in, which police spotted about 40 minutes later. By this point, he was driving west on Route 48. While Foster briefly stopped when officers attempted to pull him over, he apparently had no intentions of coming quietly and quickly took off once again. He spent the next 45 minutes driving all over the area while attempting to elude police cruisers, who were assisted by a helicopter overhead. The situation came to a dramatic end when Foster started heading through the town of Greenport, specifically down Sound Road. Because this road is a dead end, authorities initially thought that the 56-year-old was trapped. However, when he started speeding up, they realized that he had other plans. Seconds later, Foster flew through the guardrail at the end of the road, launching himself and his rental vehicle off of a bluff at approximately 100 miles an hour. He crashed into the beach below before the car bounced into the water. Now, some of the sources we came across claim that the drop from the bluff onto 67 Steps Beach is 100 feet. However, after looking on Google Maps, there's no way that this is the case. Don't get me wrong, the whole thing was still stupid and reckless, but the drop is maybe a third of that height at best, judging from pictures. Anyway, despite trying to carry out a low-budget Thelma and Louise, Foster was apparently not that badly injured. He was pulled from the water immediately after the crash and arrested, and is now facing numerous charges, including second-degree criminal contempt, third-degree criminal mischief, and unlawful fleeing, as well as a whole mess of traffic violations. That's all in addition to 2 outstanding warrants that had already been issued for his arrest related to violating the order of protection against his ex-wife. Representatives from the New Jersey State Police say that a 42-year-old man is facing a number of charges this week after he was accused of stealing an ultralight airplane, crash landing it, and then committing a pair of burglaries as part of an apparent attempt to fix the damaged vehicle. The whole thing started sometime on August 6th when authorities say that the suspect, 42-year-old Robert Wagner, snuck onto the property of an airport in the city of Pemberton. After entering the facility's hangar, Wagner allegedly took a Quad City Ultralight Challenger 2 plane outside, removing its emergency locator transmitter before doing so. He then got behind the controls and flew away with the aircraft. It's believed that Wagner traveled approximately 60 miles in the stolen plane before crashing it in a field in Corbin City. Once there, the case only got stranger, as it's alleged that the 42-year-old carried out 2 burglaries in the local area. During at least one of these burglaries, it's alleged that he stole and attempted to charge tools that he planned to use to try to fix the damaged aircraft. It wasn't until the following morning, August 7th, that Wagner was finally caught. According to reports, he was arrested after police received calls about a strange man walking barefoot along a roadway close to the field where he crashed. Wagner apparently told officers about the crash, but refused to reveal his name. He also claimed that he had permission to use the plane. At first, the 42-year-old was simply arrested on obstruction charges. However, once he was in custody, authorities began to piece together what had really happened. Wagner is now facing a number of charges, including criminal attempt, criminal mischief, burglary, criminal trespass, theft, receiving stolen property, obstruction, and hindering.
Representatives from the LAPD say that a woman is in custody this week following an unhinged attack at a local Mexican restaurant in which she completely destroyed the business with her car. The whole thing started at around 7:30 p.m. on August 9th when the suspect, who has not been identified by name, showed up at a Tacos Reyes in Canoga Park. After pulling into a handicapped parking spot directly outside, witnesses say that she began honking incessantly and waving her arms as if to motion people out of the way. Moments later, the unthinkable happened. According to reports, the woman accelerated up and over the curb and into the restaurant's storefront. She then reversed and did it again, and again, and again, until she was completely inside the business. Unfortunately, the situation was still far from over. The woman allegedly continued this cycle of crashing and reversing into everything she could inside even after police arrived at the scene. She was only stopped after officers were finally able to forcefully pull her from her vehicle. By that point, the restaurant's storefront was completely destroyed, as was a large part of the interior and a shared wall with the business next door. Thankfully, it seems no injuries were reported as a result of the incident, likely due to the fact that people heard the honking and were able to get out of the way before the vehicle started ramming again. As for a motive behind the incident, nothing has been confirmed, though it has been revealed that the female suspect was a former employee of the business and has also recently been arrested for vandalizing one of the restaurant's catering trucks. Despite this, representatives from the business say that they have been left stunned and confused. They say that it's been 4 years since the suspect worked for them, and that she left on, quote, really good terms. In fact, they claim that the woman's mother is still an employee there, and has been for more than 8 years. At the time of this recording, the female suspect remains in custody on felony vandalism charges. Representatives from Arizona's Apache Junction Police Department released dramatic surveillance footage this week. Video which they allege shows the moment an elderly man crashed his vehicle into a crowded bar while under the influence of alcohol. The incident took place just before 8:30 p.m. on September 7th at the Apache Junction Elks Lodge building. The organization was in the middle of hosting a well-attended prime rib dinner when the suspect, 73-year-old Thomas Kane, reportedly got behind the wheel of his truck in the parking lot. Kane was apparently attempting to leave the premises, though instead somehow ended up hitting the accelerator instead. Newly released video shows how the vehicle came barreling through the establishment moments later, taking down anything and anyone in its path. Thankfully, it appears no one was killed as a result of the incident, though at least 30 people were injured. According to police, 15 victims needed to be taken to area hospitals after the crash, with one person arriving in critical condition. They are now stable and expected to survive. Kane was arrested at the scene, and police say that they believe that alcohol played a role in the crash. However, at the time of this recording, they're still awaiting blood tests to determine the extent of his alleged impairment. The 73-year-old has been charged with 12 counts of aggravated assault, 17 counts of endangerment, as well as DUI. The Arizona Department of Liquor Licenses and Control also say that they are conducting their own independent investigation in order to determine the cause of the situation and the events that led up to it.
Representatives from the NYPD say that a 55-year-old man has been slapped with numerous charges this week following a wild road rage incident in which he allegedly stole a tow truck that was getting ready to haul off his illegally parked vehicle. The dramatic incident unfolded sometime on September 9th, when the victim, an unidentified tow truck driver, was called to remove an illegally parked Chevy Silverado pickup from outside of a business in Brooklyn's Sunset Park neighborhood. The black pickup truck had reportedly been left in front of the doors of a loading zone, though some sources state that the vehicle was simply being repossessed. Either way, what happened next was truly unhinged. The tow truck driver had gotten the pickup onto his hitch and was in the middle of securing it when he was confronted by the vehicle's owner, later identified as 55-year-old Russell Lyosa. And let's just say, he wasn't too happy to discover what was going on. In video footage recorded by witnesses, Lyosa can be seen screaming at the tow truck driver and making threats. He allegedly tried to fight the driver in the street while yelling things such as, quote, "Dude, put my f***ing truck down now," and quote, "I'm warning you, motherfucker, get the f*** away from my truck." When the freakout failed to stop the tow truck driver, the 55-year-old took a much more desperate and dangerous approach. After jumping behind the wheel of the tow truck, Lyosa allegedly began to drive down 53rd Street with his own pickup still attached. In the video, you can see as the driver's side door is ripped fully backwards on its hinges as the vehicle begins to smash into numerous parked cars lining the road. Before long, the pickup, which appears to have only been partially secured, flies off completely and rolls across the street. Thankfully, it seems that no one was injured as a result of the incident, though it's easy to see how things could have turned out differently. Police announced that Lyosa had been arrested a few days later and is now facing charges including robbery, grand larceny auto, reckless endangerment, leaving the scene of an accident, and 11 counts of property damage. I don't know what it is this week with guys doing dumb shit in pickup trucks, but this next story might just take the cake. Authorities in Boulder, Colorado say that a 48-year-old Massachusetts man is facing a litany of charges this week following a dangerous hit-and-run rampage, one that ended on the football field of a local university. The whole thing started at around 6:45 p.m. on September 12th when Boulder police were called about a collision near Arapahoe Avenue and Foothills Parkway. Witnesses stated that a man was driving erratically in a blue Toyota Tundra and that he had struck multiple vehicles before fleeing the scene. They had tried to stop him, however, he had nearly hit one bystander and had gone on to run down multiple trees and street signs. When police caught up with the driver, later identified as 48-year-old Massachusetts resident Carl E. Hagland, he wasn't any more cooperative. He continued his destructive rampage, refusing to pull over while hitting additional objects on the road. The rampage only came to an end after Hagland allegedly rammed his truck through the gates of Folsom Field, a football stadium belonging to the University of Colorado Boulder. Even then, he only got out of his severely damaged vehicle following a standoff with officers. The shirtless 48-year-old was captured in a wild photo as he stands in front of his totaled pickup truck near one of the field's 30-yard lines with his hands in the air. Haglund is now facing a number of charges, including criminal attempt vehicular assault, reckless endangerment, vehicular eluding, 3 counts of leaving the scene of a crash after damage, failure to obey traffic control device, driving without insurance, criminal mischief of $100,000 to $150,000, obstruction of a peace officer, and trespassing. It's still unclear why he was driving recklessly in the first place. The University of Colorado, meanwhile, say that they are working to repair the damage to Folsom Field. They hope to be done by the time of their next home game on September 21st.
Authorities in Kenosha County, Wisconsin say that a 37-year-old fugitive is successfully in custody this week following a bizarre incident in which he led police on a brief high-speed chase in a limousine. The incident began at around 4 p.m. on September 16th when an officer from Wisconsin's Pleasant Prairie Police Department spotted a driver behaving strangely on the road. The man was behind the wheel of a white limo and was traveling well under the speed limit. After noticing a registration violation with the vehicle, the officer attempted to conduct a traffic stop. That's when the driver, later identified as 37-year-old Bradley Semmerich, sped off. Dashcam and body cam footage that was released this week shows parts of the strange and short-lived chase that followed. In it, Semmerich can allegedly be seen driving recklessly down the road, at one point blowing past a school bus that has its lights flashing, indicating that children are about to cross. Moments later, the 37-year-old attempts to pass another car by driving onto the shoulder of the road, only to lose control and crash into a ditch. Though this disabled the limo, Semmerich still apparently wasn't willing to give up without a fight. He ran off into some nearby woods, where he reportedly had to be restrained multiple times and at one point bit an officer. He was finally taken into custody when backup arrived at the scene. Following Semmerich's arrest, police say they found methamphetamine in the limo, as well as other items suggesting that the 37-year-old had also been dealing drugs. They also discovered that Semmerich was a convicted felon with multiple warrants out for his arrest. At the time of this recording, charges are still pending in connection with this week's incident.
Representatives from Florida's Marion County Sheriff's Office say that a suspect's hopes of escape quite literally went up in smoke last week when he attempted to flee the scene of an alleged domestic incident, only for his getaway vehicle to burst into flames mid-chase. The whole thing started a little after 1:30 a.m. on September 20th, when Marion County deputies were called about a domestic dispute at a Murphy gas station just outside the city of Ocala. When officers arrived, they found one of the people involved, 39-year-old Derek Rouse. He was in a gold Chevy Trailblazer behind the gas station, though apparently he wasn't planning on sticking around. When deputies tried to make a traffic stop, Rouse allegedly sped off. For the next little while, he tried to get away, all the while blowing through stop signs and just generally engaging in dangerous driving. In the end, though, it was the 39-year-old's own vehicle that gave him up. In dashcam footage released by the Sheriff's Department this week, you can clearly see smoke pouring from the SUV part of the way into the chase. A short time later, fire can be seen coming from the interior, moments before Rouse pulls over and jumps out onto the ground on his stomach in surrender. The 39-year-old was arrested at the scene and is now charged with operating a motor vehicle without a valid license and resisting a police officer while fleeing. In a social media post following the incident, the Sheriff's Department wrote in part, quote, "Lesson of the day, stop means stop. Oh, and running from law enforcement, that's never a good idea." It's still unclear exactly why Rouse's vehicle burst into flames, though in the same post authorities did mention that he had pulled some, quote, questionable driving maneuvers during the chase.
Representatives from California's Carlsbad Police Department say that a man is lucky to be alive this week after he allegedly drove his vehicle right off of a cliff during the middle of a chase. The whole thing began sometime around 4 p.m. on November 4th when police spotted a red sedan crashing into a fence at the Carlsbad's Fleet Maintenance Department building on the 2400 block of Impala Drive. Officers attempted to pull the male driver of the vehicle over, however, he reportedly refused and began to flee the scene. The situation prompted a chase, one that was apparently abandoned at one point due to safety concerns. However, it appears it was picked up again a short time later as the suspects headed down Carlsbad Boulevard. What happened next shocked both authorities and onlookers. While going somewhere between 40 and 50 miles per hour, the red sedan headed off the road and over the side of a cliff. The vehicle plunged dozens of feet until it slammed onto the beach below. The driver was pulled from the wreck and suffered life-threatening injuries, though miraculously is expected to survive. Still, police say they aren't sure what had caused all of this, and are still trying to piece together exactly what happened. They have stated, though, that they don't believe drugs or alcohol played a role. A person who saw the crash unfold told local media, quote, "At first I thought it was a regular traffic stop when I saw him. But when I saw the 4 police vehicles following him, I was like, this is definitely something different. It sounded like an explosion, honestly. It was similar to a firework. It was just one big thud. It sounded like a wave breaking, a really hard wave. It was insane." At the time of this recording, the driver's name has not been released, and it's unclear what, if any, charges he'll be facing.
Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.